To Some Assembly Required, Organizing Free Thinkers. This is a podcast about organizing free thought groups and skeptic communities. And our goal with this show is to inspire more atheists and skeptics to go out there and start a group and go out there and do something important for your community. And for those who already are doing that, to give you a little bit of feedback and help you troubleshoot. Because the problems that we've encountered are not the first time these have happened, and they are not the last. So hopefully watching the show will help out a little bit. Today we're talking about the subject of Ask an Atheist Ask an Atheist meetups, which have become extremely popular lately. And joining me is Josh Hyde from the Kansas City Atheist Coalition.
All right.
We've got James Foutch, one of the, I believe it was the former vice president of the Springfield Freethinkers, my old stomping grounds.
Secretary, but who's counting?
We got Gordon Maples. He's with the SSA, and but though not speaking on behalf of.
Sure.
And we've got David Diskin from the Sacramento Area Coalition of Reason and Camp Quest West. And David Williamson from the Central Florida Free Thought Community and the Suncoast Skeptics. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Thanks.
So just getting things started, some of you may be aware that just yesterday there was a simulcast with William Lane Craig and Lee Strobel talking about atheism. They called it Unpacking Atheism, and the whole premise was atheism is on the rise. These scary free thinkers are gaining traction. What do we do about that? Who are these people? What do they think? And I kind of went in expecting a straw man, and it kind of was a straw man. So no big surprises there. But me and the Kansas City Atheist Coalition, we went to go see this at a church. And there was a little bit of trepidation among the congregants at first, but very quickly they warmed up to us. And as soon as the talk was over, several of them came up to us to talk to us about who we are and what we believe. And it was very enlightening, I think. They got a very good idea of what atheists are actually like, which was in direct conflict with what William Lane Craig had just told them, which I think was brilliant. And after the I guess, service, the pastor came up and asked if we would be willing to come back and do a kind of an Ask an Atheist event. He didn't say it in those terms. He'd probably never heard of those events. But that's exactly what he was asking, is if we would come by for 2 hours and answer questions. And I think this is a testament to the strength of this kind of event. And several of the people joining me today have actually run events just like that. So I was hoping they could talk a little bit about that. And Gordon, you start first.
Okay, I've run who knows how many of these tables at the University of Alabama when I ran the student group there. It was very interesting in that you did have people that were just genuinely and generally curious. And it gave us an opportunity to not only humanize atheism, agnosticism, etc., and actually put a human image in their head to associate with that, as opposed to seeing whatever their pastor has told them to imagine associated with that. And it really does have a dramatic difference, and that's really what I find the most important thing about that, about those events, is you really are replacing a sinister entity of fiction with an actual human face. And that's also particularly why politeness goes a long way when doing those events.
Josh, I know you've done these.
Yep, done two of them. One in a fairly conservative area, which had kind of a negative response to, but we got a few deists who came up and a few closet atheists who came and asked us, and then one in kind of a more, I'd say, liberal and irreligious area, and it was really interesting to me because we had religious people come up, and the question that kind of, I think, really illuminated the reason why these events are good is the guy asked me, so atheists don't read the Bible, right? And I said, well, some do, but for all intents and purposes, no, we don't, like Christians are supposed to. And he goes, so what book do atheists read? And it was just this this idea that because all Christians center their life around the book, all atheists must do the same. And so it really highlighted the lack of awareness in the general public around atheism. And so I think that kind of underlines the necessity and importance and value of these events.
And what kind of negative backlash have you gotten about these?
Oh, we got one guy who actually just we were dispersed around an area, and so he took it upon himself to just visit each of us and tell each of us how we were going to hell, which was a lot of effort on his part. I almost admired that kind of dedication that it required. And we had just the people who would just buzz by and say, "God bless you" or "God loves you," and they managed to say it in such a way that makes it sound like an insult, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. So and that was up in the conservatory. I think the most memorable kind of negative feedback we got from the one in the more irreligious area was these kids came up. We had some candy on the table in front of us just to draw in children like atheists do, and they were just sitting there munching on it. And atheism. What? Okay, so you're atheist? We go, yeah. And he says, well, what is atheism? And we go, well, it means we don't believe in a God. And they literally threw the candy at the people at the table and ran away. And then they just kind of gathered into a crowd amongst themselves and kind of whispered to each other and then sent a delegate to ask us more questions.
I've got a lot of those. Part of what I do with the SSA is actually go around to all the groups in the Southeast. I meet with them and stay in regular contact with them, and they all everybody's got a story with their Ask an Atheist. Nearly all the groups do them, and they all seem to have at least one crazy experience. The one that was my favorite was when I was at Alabama. A guy came up to the table and was just like, "Oh, cool, Ask an Atheist. You guys know where the information desk is?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, it's over there." It's like, "Thank you so much. You're all going to hell."
Wow.
That's actually pretty brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, he asked a question, and we gave him an answer, so...
Yeah, I did have, at one of our events, someone asked me whether or not I thought the Chiefs were going to win the game that night, and I had no idea, but, it technically falls under the purview. All it said was, ask me, I'm an atheist. It didn't say to ask about atheism. So I'll be more specific next time, I guess, with the lesson to draw from that.
I think it's great when people ask questions like that, though. I mean, it gives you an opportunity to show that you're part of the community, that you're not just there to preach or proselytize. We get asked all the time, where's the restroom? Where's this? Where's the food cart? And silly questions, too, like who's going to win the game tonight? And that's okay. I mean, we're going to get the serious questions. If we get some fun ones in there, it lends to a great story after when we get together to, grab a beer or dessert or something like that.
It really does. It's a great social binding experience.
On that same note, if somebody brings up a question that isn't directly tied to atheism, that can actually be a good way to enlighten people about what atheists believe, because there are some people who will conflate skepticism and atheism, and while they're usually intersected, they aren't always. And there's also people who think that we're devil worshippers. So sometimes asking completely off-base questions can actually, I think, enlighten people.
Yeah, I think you have to be careful that you don't want to try to tie atheism into whether or not the Chiefs are going to win the game tonight. Otherwise, you'll come off as just someone like a proselytizing Christian who tries to weave God into everything they mention.
You could do a TiVo after that if you wanted.
I could. I missed opportunity. I'll keep that in mind next time.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of fun with ours. We kind of pick random events in the Sacramento area to go to. We've done, just like we'll go to the zoo, or we'll go to a museum, or there's like a parade, like a Pride Festival or an Earth Day. We all wear these shirts that say "Ask an Atheist," bright blue, you can't miss it, and just kind of walk around and have fun, and at the same time, help people understand that we're not all baby eaters, and it's a lot of fun that way.
So you actually did James?
Well, yeah, and everyone has commented on everything that has happened at the The several ones that I've done, the last one that I remember at Missouri State, um, it was we had the opportunity to not only engage the community that was around us, who had really no clue that there were not only such a thing as atheists, but that that we were organized in any way, shape, or form. It allowed us to expose quite a few people who, especially with the international student population that was prevalent in Missouri State, who didn't necessarily ever meet anybody who was out as an atheist. And it was a hell of a lot of entertainment because we got some of them weird questions. I spent 20 minutes talking to a guy about the dialectical nature of morality, and I don't even know how the heck we got on that topic. But it was uproarious fun because he was just a lunatic.
Yeah, I always run into people in our group that are really hesitant to join an event, a meetup like an Ask an Atheist. They always think that we're going to go out there, we're going to get tomatoes thrown at us, and we're going to get people just badgering us left and right. And in my experience, and with others who've gone, I don't think that happens. I don't know about you guys, but like the ratio, if you will, of like positive comments to negative comments is way in the positive range. And a lot of times the greatest thing is when you'll get like a couple or two or three people like kind of walking by you, and they don't engage you, but they kind of look at you and they give you that secret thumbs up, like, yeah, hey, I'm with you guys, but I'm not going to engage because I don't want my friends to know I'm still in the closet. And that kind of connection, even though you're not really saying anything, that's cool to know that you're like, hey, this guy, at least he's with us. He knows that we exist. Our group is there for him later if he wants to come back. And it's just really cool to see that kind of trench coat thumbs up kind of thing. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, on one of the events we did, one of the biggest outcomes of it was the amount of community outreach. I mean, I'd say, quite honestly, more than half the people we passed our little pamphlets or postcards to were actually atheists themselves who wanted to know about the community in Kansas City. So it's a great way to actually find other people who are already atheists but just don't know that there are other atheists where they happen to live, which, especially in the Bible Belt, is very useful for atheists.
In a big way, the Bible Belt, I think has, I don't want to say an advantage, but atheist groups have a bigger need to fill. Right. When I lived in Portland, I didn't really feel like I needed an atheist group nearly as much as I did when I moved out of Portland. I don't know. I mean, James could probably speak to that since he's done the opposite.
It's a little weird, to be honest. It seems like every other block there's a shop devoted to either crystals or Reiki or some weirdness that has no basis in fact, but no one really pushes their religion on you. It's so totally backwards from the model in that buckle of the Bible Belt. However, having come from that buckle and growing up around that, it's something that I dearly miss. I feel that that's something that an atheist group like what we had in Springfield and like what I've seen at other places would have a definite fit in this area. I just wish I had the time to do something about it.
Yeah, grad school, as I understand it, doesn't really lend itself to that.
Yeah.
So, Josh, I'm interested. I think you said that you hand out flyers when you're out there. I'm interested in the group's opinion of that. We made it a rule not to hand out flyers only because we were worried that people would take them and then litter with them, later on, and then we'd get blamed for that, and we didn't want to be like, oh, there's those atheist flyers laying around on the ground. And does that happen with you guys at all?
It didn't with that event. I mean, we've done a couple of things where people would take the postcard from us and then immediately drop into a trash can. So at least they're not littering. But the nice thing about the pamphlets, they're just these 3-page folds. If you want to go into the full definition of what Gnosticism, agnosticism, theism, atheism, and skepticism, and naturalism, and all those things that don't really fit into a 3-word soundbite, it's a great way to just give them something that they take with them, and they often did take with them after they left and just kind of continued learning after they had finished talking with you.
That's cool.
And also, it's a good way to put URLs for your various organizations so that they have something with the URL so they can go home and look it up on their browser or on the computer and find out more about the groups and maybe even start participating or become a member of them.
Yeah, that might be something we change.
Stephen will get this quite a bit from or what I'm about to ask from our experience in Springfield. Kind of going off of what David was talking about, in that not feeling quite right about doing certain things, that pushback that you get from some members about not wanting to either whatever they want to call it, like proselytize by going out and hosting and doing these Ask an Atheist events or just being visible in the community. Have you folks ever had or run into that problem on a regular basis?
I think
sorry, go ahead.
Those are the people who just don't show up. I mean, there's definitely going to be people who aren't interested in that kind of event, and that's fine. We have enough members that they don't have to be a part of that. When we do these in Sacramento, we'll get between 5 to 10 people, maybe 12, and we have a rule that we don't bunch up all 12 people together, because then you're like a gang walking around, right? So we tend to break people up into groups of like 2 to 3 and spread them out. But yeah, if they're not interested in that kind of thing, they just don't show up. We've got plenty of other kinds of events for them to come to that have nothing to do with walking around and coming out of the closet, so to speak.
That's pretty much been my position on that, is, have as many types of events as you can, and as long as, you're not doing something terrible like, setting fire to a church, it should be fine for people to do their own thing. I, for example, don't get into book clubs because I can't read on a schedule, so I don't go to the book clubs. But I completely don't have a problem with other people doing it. But yeah, we did have a big pushback in our group with people who didn't want us to do anything that looked like activism.
Stephen?
Yes.
I apologize for missing a little bit of the conversation earlier. I'm having a memory problems with my computer, not my head. But the something that we did, I can't call it a successful event, but I can say we were really proud of the idea. Was we had a large poster put together of all of the groups, charities, secular charities, of course, that we donated to. And we confirmed that they were secular, and most of the people in the group were only donating to those anyway. So we took those, snagged their logos off the internet, and made a big 24 by 36 poster to post at the event that we had, and it said, look what atheists can do. I don't remember the exact phrase, but you can come up with your own little soundbite there and talk about all the stuff that you have done, and you can probably get away with a little bit of advertising with that, but you want to be wary of throwing a lot of logos around without permission, especially when there's sometimes some negative kickback from us participating in secular charity events because of the stigmatism.
An easy workaround to do something like that, if you want to talk about how atheists can do good things, is to bring up Foundation Beyond Belief, because it's an atheist organization, and they do exactly what you were talking about. Is they collect secular charities, and let people give to them so they can give to the secular charities. So I mean, you're not likely to get a lot of pushback from associating with them.
Right.
How many of you guys?
Definitely.
No, go ahead.
They were definitely one of the ones that we had on there, and it was interesting to get probably 50 charities out of 25 or 30 people where we could say we donated our time and money.
How many of you guys are participating in Light the Night with Leukemia Lymphoma Society? Any of you?
I'm afraid we had a conference that was taking up all our time for this month, so we didn't actually get around to that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be neat. I think when we tell people that the free thought community as a whole is going to, if our projections work, donate $500,000 to Leukemia Lymphoma Society, and then have that matched by one guy to be $1 million donation. And then we tell them that's the first time any organization has ever given that much money to that group. People are blown away by that. They don't realize how much money we do give to nonprofit organizations, whether they're a completely secular organization like the Red Cross or a free thought kind of organization, like Secular Student Alliance, we do give a lot of money.
So
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's hard for atheists to get the charity that we give counted as atheist charity, because it's usually just charities that aren't necessarily religious, like the Red Cross.
Take credit for every one of those. Every charity that's not a freaking church is a secular charity, as far as I'm concerned. If they don't have "We're a Christian Ministry" in their about page,
Not a very vibrant color, and even outside of that crowd, a gaggle of 15 to 20 people wearing these bright sky blue shirts really catches the eye.
Hey, sorry about
and really
that.
draws people in. So yeah, wearing shirts that are.
Sorry to interrupt.
we should probably restart that.
yeah.
Whenever the host gets kicked off, it automatically stops broadcasting.
Oh.
So I hate to ask anyone to repeat themselves, but yeah, David, if you could start right back where you were about how you should just claim them as secular charities, that would be great.
Sure. What I was saying was that we need to take every charity that's not a church and make it a secular charity. I don't think we can claim it as a free thought or atheist charity, but we can certainly call it agnostic and secular, in my opinion. And I was surprised at how many folks thought that the Habitat for Humanity was a secular charity and not a Christian ministry, which in fact it is.
Yeah, they
claiming it like that, and actually I think is a really great idea, because it might force some of those charities that people don't necessarily know are not secular to claim that they are, just to distance themselves from the idea that they might be secular in some way.
Right.
Yeah, and not to try to get us too far off topic, but I would go so far as to say that there's not a reason, I think, to necessarily exclude religious charities. We work with Kansas City Rescue Mission, who is basically a religious organization run by religious people, but they don't require any statements or professions of faith in order to receive help. They're just religious people who are doing good things. And I think those are great opportunities that shouldn't be passed up to actually continue to do help. And if anything, it shows that atheists are willing to, bridge that theological gap and work with people who disagree with them theologically but align with them ideologically.
I think that the criteria that they use for the Foundation Beyond Belief is a pretty sound one. Basically, they will give to religious charities, but only if proselytization and religious activities is not where that money is going to.
Right.
So if you're giving to an organization and all that money goes to giving people food, that's fine.
Yeah, and somebody had asked a question before we lost the conversation about what we wear, what people have chosen to wear. Pose that question again, because I think that was a good topic.
Yeah, I was just curious because I think somebody else said the same thing. We wear just a bright blue shirt that says "Ask an Atheist" with a question mark on it, and that definitely gets attention. I was wondering what the rest of the group does, if they wear the same shirts or if they just kind of show up wearing whatever.
Yeah. Like I was saying, Kansas City Atheist Coalition does that, the bright sky blue shirts with our logos on it, and it's exactly like you said. You get a bunch of people together wearing these bright, vibrant colors, it's going to catch the eye, it's going to draw people in, and even if it doesn't say "Ask an Atheist," if people are just going to be curious as to what all these people in these same colored shirts are gathering for, and they'll go and talk to you.
I think there's a benefit to that approach, but I think there's also a benefit to not looking like, and a gang's not the right word, but you get the idea, a group of people may be harder to approach than a group of individuals. So I think depending upon the circumstances, both of those scenarios might work well, and I'd be interested to find out in the future for folks that have tried it both ways and see what they prefer.
Well, I know
Sorry, go ahead. Oh. All right. I mean, yeah, I think that speaks more to don't just all hunker down into a group together, and, because it's intimidating to go up to, a group of 10 or 15 people who all know each other. You got that Stranger Thing plus they're atheists, what are they going to do to me kind of effect. But what we ended up doing was we had a table which about 3 or 4 of us were at, just with various literature and stuff like that, and then we just had 2 or 3 of us at various street corners around that people, as people were just walking down the sidewalk, so that they can see that there is a group of people with the same colored shirts, but it's never an intimidatingly large number of people that I think prohibits people from approaching us, or at least they'll find a reason to avoid us, but it won't be for the numbers at the very least.
I think that if you can wear the same thing, that actually makes you more approachable. Because if you see 2 strangers on the street and they're just wearing regular street clothes, it can be a little intimidating because we're trained not to talk to strangers. But whenever you see 2 people and they're clearly wearing their Greenpeace shirt or whatever, you know that if you want to go up and talk about Greenpeace, they'll be more than happy to, and they're not going to tell you to go fudge off.
Right.
Yeah. Good point.
Well, and plus, let's admit it, people in our community have a tendency to wear occasionally offensive shirts, and if you leave it up to the person to wear whatever they feel like, they're going to wear who knows what. And so at least this way you have some control over what their message is.
Offensive to who?
Yeah, well, who knows?
I know.
I mean, I think the one thing you don't want to do in Ask an Atheist kind of outreach event is stir up negative trouble. I mean, it's one thing to point out the horrible things that the church does, but at the same time, you don't want to be just those jerk atheists that are walking around just saying that everything else is wrong and blah blah blah, and look at their offensive shirts, and because then you're not approachable to anybody who's anywhere near the fence. You might get like the hardcore atheists come by and say hi. But that person who's just kind of like, I don't know if I'm an atheist, I don't know if I want to talk to these guys, they're not going to come talk to you, especially if they're with their friends. It's just not a thing they want to be a part of.
Yeah, I think that the arguments in favor of wearing the same outfit and different outfits, I think they all have merit. It's just like the same arguments for convincing someone of your beliefs with a hard argument or a soft argument. I think it depends on the scenario, depends on the audience, depends on the location, and all these things. So I think that's all good information.
Actually, I think that it really depends on the format of your Ask an Atheist event. I mean, and just listening to this, there's a lot of different ways to do this, and that scenario is really going to be different in how you should present yourself.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive shirts have their place and time, and it really is dependent upon whether or not you want to be approachable. Because I've got a shirt that says, kill your child now, just kidding, sincerely God, Genesis, such and such and such. And it gets people's attention. But if you're trying to be approachable rather than generate attention and controversy and just kind of that kind of firebrand feedback, then yeah, you don't want people wearing those shirts because, like I said, it'll put people off, atheists and theists alike.
Yeah.
I can kind of see what you're saying. I think it's important to point out, though, that while you do want to, put your best foot forward and be friendly and approachable, and not, sour the conversation before it starts, there is a certain point where just being an atheist is going to offend them. I mean,
certainly.
You might be able to see it here, but this is a Lego Evolution T-shirt, and I mean, I can wear that one to work, and most of my colleagues don't have a problem with it, but there are people who will be offended by the depiction of evolution, and you can't win all of those battles.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, I don't know if you guys are ready to turn the corner, but speaking of that, when we talk about an Ask an Atheist event, we're kind of labeling everyone in the free thought movement if they're going to have that type of event, and I think that there's no better phrase for that event because of the catchiness of it. I know SSA is promoting that strongly, but something that I've tried to do in the group that we just started is to get away from labeling people by calling ourselves a free thought society as opposed to a group of free thinkers. What do you guys think about that? And is that something we've discussed on the show before? Maybe we don't want to get into.
I don't know that it's been discussed on the show too terribly much. It's one of those conversations that is of interest to free thinkers, but not very much beyond that.
Right.
I mean, whenever me and my wife were talking to her parents about her not being religious anymore, I mean, we chose humanists to talk about. I mean, it kind of said more about what our values were, and it didn't have that knee-jerk reaction. But I do think, on the whole, atheist is one of the best words we can use. It's just describing one answer to one thing. It doesn't have a lot of extra baggage that you have to explain, like, well, I'm a X, but I don't believe in Y, Z, and L. And I think we should probably try to embrace that more than try to find ways around that. I mean, free thinker is still a great term, and it's very, welcoming. And who wouldn't want to be a free thinker? It just sounds great.
Our group in Stockton, they use the word atheist and other free thinkers in their name, but the reason we wanted the word atheist in there is because we want to help change the public perception of the word atheist. And we're out there doing good deeds, cleaning up parks, and we have a little plaque that says that. And whenever we do like a press release, the word atheist is there to try and change that perception and try and turn people around. And if we use words like free thinker or humanist, then while those are great words and I'm happy to wear that label, I don't think the public, number one, necessarily understands what those words are, and number two, you change somebody's idea of the word free thinker and it doesn't really help anybody. Whereas we need to change what people understand the word atheist to be.
Why?
Why? I think because they're scared of that word. I think that they're taught in their congregation that atheists are bad people. And of course, that's not the case.
The simulcast I mentioned earlier with Lee Strobel and William Lane Craig wasn't called Unpacking Humanism. It was called Unpacking Atheism because atheism is the scary thing they can bring up. That's the word that they associate, with incorrectly with Hitler and with Stalin, and that's what they can bring up to attack us with. And the thing is, that doesn't help if we avoid using that label. That's kind of ceding ground, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot like reclaiming the word. Like you have the gay movement who've reclaimed the word gay. And you have to realize that when you're being attacked, they love to use those negatively connotative words, like socialism and communism and atheism, and we have to reclaim that and turn that perception around, I think.
Okay, you're right, but it's worth pointing out that not everyone has to use that label. I mean, they've got alphabet soup for a reason.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think that's the same case with us. I don't like forcing labels on people. I think you can destigmatize the term with just who wants to label themselves atheist, labeling themselves atheist. So at our Ask an Atheist events, when I ran them, we had our Ask an Atheist stickers that were just kind of mass produced, but we also had just blank labels. Let people label themselves, or else you're creating unnecessary conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's... Go ahead, David.
At Camp Quest, we actually have... 2 years ago, we ran an activity basically straight to that concept. We gave the children just an empty sheet of these Avery labels and asked them to write as many labels as they wanted about themselves. And, they wrote atheist or humanist, but they also write, World of Warcraft player and Minecraft and stuff like that, and soccer player. And so we turned that into an exercise of, why labels in some cases are useful and important, and why in other cases they're really not useful or important at all. I think it was a really good experience for them. But you're right, it applies to the adult world in just the same way.
In a big way, that can also help people who come to these events understand that whatever idea you had in your head about what an atheist is, it's a lot more diverse and complicated on the personal level than you thought about it.
I think it's as I think of these issues, and I get more and more in the movement, and have been for just a few years now, as I mentioned before, with the arguments for your belief being a strong or weak one, the label that you choose, depending upon where you live in the country, may be important. While we might be able to call ourselves atheists in in big cities, we may have a hard time doing that in rural areas or in deep in the Bible Belt. And I say a hard time, as in there's certainly different challenges depending upon what your goals are. And I think that it's not a dichotomy, and I'd like to clearly state that, especially when talking to 5 rational people who call me out on it. But it's not it's not either we take back the word atheist or we make the world a better place for free thinkers to live. It's not one or the other. But I think that my focus is not having the conversation about what an atheist is, as opposed to let's work on church-state separation and let's talk about free thought and atheism, but not with the A word. And don't get me wrong, I'm not afraid of it. I'm just worried that the organization that I'm working on now is not going to benefit from that. And I don't care about the word atheist for the sake of the word atheist, but that doesn't mean I don't agree with your arguments, David, that we need to take back that word, just not as the highest priority in my mind.
Well, and I think using the word atheist kind of has a dual purpose. I mean, not only just to take it back, but also in the interest of what we were talking about before, it is a dirty word in a lot of areas, and that's going to catch a lot more eyes, a lot more attention than if you say, ask a secularist or ask a free thinker. People are just going to. It doesn't really grab you like atheist does for a lot of people, because those words don't necessarily have, well, secularist is starting to get that connotation, but free thinker and humanist really doesn't have that kind of grab your attention connotation. Yeah, the bite.
Yeah.
I think the label, much like anything else, is just another tool in the organizer's toolbox. It all entirely depends on where you're at. Like the group that we had in Springfield, it really wasn't to our best interests to have the word atheist in our group name. So Springfield Freethinkers was in all reality, one of the best choices for us. But the group was largely consisted of atheists, or at least self-avowed ones.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, atheist is not like the ultimatum, you must do this, or GTFO. Because, I mean, you want to be able to work with deists. We've got Buddhists, and if you got any pagans or Wiccans who want to, like, going back to what I said, who align with you ideologically, if not, but maybe not theologically, these are still people you may want to have in your groups. So you may want to opt for free thinker to be more accessible. So yeah, it all depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I agree.
Shifting gears a little bit, here's a question. Have any of you running one of the Ask An Atheist events been stumped? Has anybody come up with a question that you just had absolutely no answer to and just had to say, I don't know?
Go ahead.
Whomever.
Okay. Admittedly, this was not an Ask an Atheist event, but we were being asked as atheists a question, and really the only question that was is, do you believe in tachyons? And it was one of those, take things on faith kind of arguments. And given that none of us are really quantum physicists, we didn't really have good explanations for what tachyons are or what the evidence is for their existence. Yeah, that's really the only one that's stumped us. Most of the questions that we get asked are really low level, just like a very, very softballs, like going back to that guy who asked us, what book do all atheists read? Well, there's no real universal book we all read. And so yeah, it's a lot of softballs.
Yeah, I can't think of anything that's stumped us, aside from stuff that's not, again, related to atheism, like, do you know where the so-and-so booth is, or the so-and-so take credit cards, or stuff like that. But, outside of that, I'm really trying to think hard. There's the occasional, like, smart-ass questions, and I can't even think of an example right now, but that just don't have answers. But, even the kind of stuff like, William Lane Craig that he throws out, about the column arguments and stuff like that. I think I've watched so many debates over time of, Christopher Hitchens and Dawkins and Harris and everyone else that it's like I just have these answers ready to go as soon as somebody just begins the thermodynamic law argument. It's just like I know what to say. It's not even like a challenge.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the pitfalls of using apologetics is that when you use a pat argument, you're going to get a pat answer because we get that question so often that you're not going to get a challenging response.
I would think that if you were to ask the people that had just walked away from an Ask an Atheist table whether or not they were stumped by a question, we might get some different answers.
And that's a fair point. I mean, that actually might be an interesting show to do too, just to grab a bunch of people who just left an Ask an Atheist table and get their impressions.
Yeah,
An exit survey.
there you go. I think that the scientific questions that we're not familiar with, that really don't relate to the existence of God, are probably the hardest ones, if that's not our specialty. But those are the ones that I try to stay away from. But honestly, when you're making a claim and just basically asserting that they haven't made their claim, doesn't make for good conversation. And I think that there's different levels of knowledge in this, and the best conversations I have about theism are with atheists, not theists.
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily the oddball questions that we get; it's the annoying questions that we get, the ones that that, like David was talking about, that we already have the pat answers to. I mean, how many times have all of us heard all of these pat arguments before, and it just becomes, really, you're asking me that again? Or worse yet, they're asking us about something that we have no clue about, and so therefore, like many of us have said before, if you're going to ask me instead of a physicist, for example, then perhaps you don't have the actual intellectual honesty and curiosity to seek out the real answer.
Well, and the people that ask those kind of questions typically don't know the answers themselves either. So you could try just making something up and seeing if they catch you in the lie.
That might be funny, but I probably wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, then you just be the atheist of the gaps, and that's not okay.
What kind of stuff do you bring up if someone doesn't have a question or just want to chat with you? What's the first thing you would talk about if you were at an event where you're trying to interact with theists?
For our stuff, we've always waited for people to come up to us. We don't want to be the people getting in people's way and saying, "Hey, have you heard about the good news of atheism?"
Right.
So there really has never been a case where someone comes up to us and doesn't have anything to say. They usually have a question that a leading question. What is atheism, or why don't you believe in God? And just the question that opening questions that we're all familiar with.
If we're in a place where we have a table, we'll try and make an effort to be friendly. Somebody's walking by and we happen to catch, eye contact. We'll wave, we'll smile, we'll say, "Hey, hope you guys are having a great day." Stuff like that. But we don't, like you said, we're not trying to proselytize in that manner. We're not going to be like, "Hey, have you heard that we sleep in on Sundays?" Stuff like that. Sure. I think it comes off as the wrong approach. I don't know. Maybe there's a time for that to be more aggressive, but I think
there is. It's called the internet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you have to respect that they're not there to be proselytized too. And the same thing that when we go to a public event, we don't want people throwing Jesus down our throat. I don't think it's right to do the opposite to them when they're at like a county fair or something like that. It just doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, and I think you guys aren't trying to make my argument different than it was, and I don't think that I was coming across as proposing that we would go out and leave the booth and start talking to folks. But I think that striking up a conversation, in my opinion, usually starts with, "What do you believe?" To get them to tell me what they believe so that I can understand what they're believing. And those are welcome conversations, not forced.
You could always, if you're worried about having an icebreaker, you could always write like a question on a piece of paper, have a big board saying what do atheists believe, and if you have that question written already when people walk up, they might just start with that one.
Yeah, good idea.
And there is benefit in being assertive. So at our Ask an Atheist event, we weren't getting a lot of bites. People just kind of do, "Oh God, don't look at them," kind of thing, until I started walking up and down the sidewalk, and I'm going to say this away from the microphone so I won't deafen you, but I'd do something like, "Atheism! Atheism, good, you're red hot atheism right here!" And just doing these funny little talks as like a peanut salesman at a baseball game, and that really got people's attention. That really got their interest. We weren't just people standing there quietly, just waiting for people to come up to us. I was something interesting, and that got a lot of interest. So there is something to be said for not just waiting for everyone to come up to you. Sometimes you do make a spectacle of yourself, basically, to get that initial grab of attention.
I remember, this isn't connected to Ask an Atheist, but Cassie Rogers, really wonderful free thinker, uh, at a protestive creationist conference, wore a dinosaur costume. And like, can you think of anything more brilliant to get people to come up and talk to you than wearing a dinosaur costume?
It was quite brilliant.
We have a mascot head.
I actually got to pin the tail on her. It was fun.
Something that kind of relates. I don't know that we can relate scientific skepticism to atheism in this context with the Ask an Atheist event, but what we did in the Suncoast Skeptics, a few things we did was we had a UFO photos event, which came from the idea from CSI West, Jim Under down there, and we went to a local restaurant on the water, and we were taking photos of our fake UFO and got conversation started. Another case, we did a dowsing event. We had people come up and douse with us. I don't think those things apply, but I thought I'd mention those because they seem good ways to get the public to come up and talk to us about what we were doing.
Yeah, anytime you can get do something clever, and this is something that we haven't really done well at. I'd like to see our group do this more whenever we have a table. Spin the wheel and win a cheap prize. Like you said, a bowl of different questions that they can ask that you have good answers ready to go for. Any kind of like a game, like a cheap bowling or a mini golf or something like that. Anything that gets people to like interact with you. Because if you look at like what the churches are doing at these same events often, they do have things that interact with you. And it gets them people, and I think that you got to admit that the churches are doing a better job, I think, in many cases, of reaching out, because they've been doing these kind of gimmicks for a lot longer than we have, and we're just now starting to play catch up. But I think there's definitely some opportunity there for us to be more interactive and not just have a table that's filled with literature and a witty banner. I think we need to be beyond that.
I would say that if you pick your venue properly, that can also help get you more interaction. For example, if your university is hosting a debate on whether or not God exists, set up your table before the event starts. The people who are going to be coming by are going to be people who are already interested in engaging with people who believe something different.
Mm-hmm. We had a table for the Skeptics event, or the Skeptics, and for the Free Thought community, and what I put on that table was a monitor with speakers and played videos that were appropriate to get kind of people's attention. I know you guys are talking about various different venues, whether it be part of a bigger affair or just an individual table, but that got folks to come over and watch, especially when they were a little more engaging.
You're fighting a battle for eyes. That's really the key of it. So you have to think of it like an advertisement. I mean, however is going to get an eye to the table. I mean, I've seen a lot of table setups, and the better ones look professional. They're not like Sharpie on a chalk or Sharpie on something. It has to look good. If it looks good, the eyes come. And usually I know of a lot of groups that have like either graphically designed trifolds or catchy flyers, anything that obviously, your biggest asset is going to be what the event is, because it's usually a pretty unique thing that's going to get people's attention. But it really does matter what you're putting on the table and what it looks like, and also what the person looks like, which goes back to how you present yourself as the person there. I actually know of one group that actually instituted a dress code for their tables, in which they all went up to like suit and tie just as an experiment. And if you think about it, that's sort of what the Mormons did to make their ideas a little more palatable, and it works. It really does. Which is sort of an alternative to doing group shirts, is actually just looking really nice and presentable.
The only objection that I have to that is, if you're a student group, you may be dealing with a lot of poor people who don't necessarily have nice clothes. But yeah, if you look professional, if you look, like you have your shit together, people will come up and talk to you.
And I think there are some definite differences between strategies for organizing outside of a school setting and organizing inside of a school setting. You're going to run into different problems, and that each have their own unique aspects.
And you're mentioning Mormons reminds me, we had this happen, at least people told us at a separate event from Ask An Atheist, but it wouldn't surprise me if it happened at an Ask An Atheist event as well. People avoided us initially because they thought we were Christians, that we were proselytizing. And when they found out that we weren't the quote-unquote crazy Christians, they started coming up to us and speaking to us. And so I think you may want to balance the professionalism or looking professional with, what do people in the area that you're going to be having that asking. If they are used to seeing Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses in nice shirts, slacks, and shoes, they may dismiss you as being yet again more Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses. So,
well, if you're doing a good table setup, it should be very clear who you are, because that should be your asset that you're projecting.
That's very true. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're coming up on time. Is there anything else that you guys would like to bring up on this subject?
I think that anybody out there should give this a shot. Don't be scared to just go out there and find a couple people and have fun with it. I think it's a great way to do some community outreach, and every time that we've done it, probably a dozen times in the past year, it's just been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and if it, to use a phrase that David Berger used in his presentation on activism, even if it's just you and your idiot friend sitting out there, that's better than nothing. So don't be upset or discouraged if it's just you and a bare handful of others, because that's more than what's been out there before, and you will attract new people, and it's just a really great way of reaching out to atheists and theists alike.
I would add not doing it alone.
Yeah.
Yes. Then you're just, if you do it alone, you're just that weird, creepy guy.
Yeah, and it's never wise to, especially in some place like the Buckle of the Bible Belt, it's never really wise to be out an atheist and alone in that situation where you're inviting people to come up and talk to you. It's
real quick before I close the show, I would like to point out, there's those people in downtown Springfield who show up with a giant cross and signs telling everybody they're going to hell. They're like our little mini Westboro Baptist Church. And I think an Ask an Atheist event would go really good kind of next to them. Like, maybe not right next to them, give them a little bit of space, but, they see the guy telling them they're all going to go die and burn forever. And then you got some people smiling, waving, and saying, "He's full of it."
Yeah. J.T. Eberhard was saying that they got Brother Jeb, who makes his way around the local schools, and he never handed out more flyers for the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster than when he was standing right next to Brother Jeb. So it's a high contrast can be another great way of attracting attention.
And a lot of times, local churches, the ones that aren't, Westboro crazy, they're happy to, work with you or have a booth next to you. I mean, they're not all that evil people that we sometimes make them out to be. And I remember in Stockton we had the Asparagus Festival. I know, but the local church, the guy who was actually on the committee for the entire event, 180,000 people go to it. They're like, oh, I wish we could have, been next to you guys, and he gave me some food, and we started a dialogue after that, and it's my hope that dialogue will eventually lead to an Ask an Atheist event at his church. We've done that before up in Galt, and it was a fantastic event to be able to be there at the church on the stage and do an Ask an Atheist right there with about 100 different parishioners. That was awesome. And so you want to build those bridges and try and make more of those things happen.
Along the lines of don't do it by yourself, is certainly don't plan it by yourself. I think if there's anything I've learned with group planning is it takes a committee to get something done as opposed to one person with a good idea. And if all you are is a person with a good idea, you need to sell it to some other people before you can make it work.
Yeah, a leader is somebody who coordinates other people to get job done, not just somebody who does it themselves.
Yeah.
All right. Any closing thoughts? Going once, going twice. All right. Well, that's it for this episode of Some Assembly Required. We'll be trying to do these a little bit more frequently. And just going left to right. Everybody close out and plug your group.
My first, I'm David Diskin with the Sacramento Area Coalition of Reason and Camp Quest West.
David Williamson with the Central Florida Free Thought, cflfreethought.org.
I'm Josh Hyde with the Kansas City Atheist Coalition and the Northland Freethinkers.
This is me. Okay. Gordon Maples, I'm with too many I can list. Just Gordon Maples.
This is James Foutch, and I'm not currently associated with anybody, but I am in the neighborhood, in Portland, that is.
All right, and I'm Steven, and I work with the Skepchick events team to put this together. We'll definitely be putting these up more frequently, and we will have them on the podcast feed soon. So thank you all for your patience with that. And until next time, that's all for today.
Thank you.